Hey, welcome back. In this video, we'll do the buttons, assembly, and then the hat and the scarf of the snowman. For the buttons, I'm using a medium weight black yarn and the crochet hook. And in round 1, it's 6 single crochet in a magic ring. Pull the ring tight and then do a slip stitch back to the first stitch. Then cut the yarn, making sure to leave a tail for sewing, and you'll be making 2 of these buttons. Now we're going to do the assembly. And I like to start with the arms. So I'm placing the arm right in the neck area. And then grab a stitch just under the neck. Go up into the arm. And then down into the next stitch on the arm, and then grab the next stitch under the neck, and do this across the arm. Then I just like to grab the stitch at the end and go back and forth under the arm a few times. Then you can bring the tail to the back. And we'll do the second arm exactly the same way, just making sure it's symmetrical with the first. And bring that tail back to meet the first one. Now the top of the nose is going right between the eyes. And I like to hold it in place using the tail from the magic ring. Now to get rid of that step change, I like to go up into the next stitch. And then down into the stitch after that. Then grab a stitch from the face, go up into a stitch on the nose, and then down into the next stitch on the nose. And then do this all the way around. Next we'll sew on the buttons. And once again, I like to hold it in place using the tail from the magic ring. Then, same as before, we grab a stitch from the body, go up into a stitch of the button, and then down into the next stitch. And then you'll do the second one exactly the same way. Next we're going to do the hat. And the hat is ribbed, which makes it more stretchy. To do this, we'll be working in back loops only. So once again, I'm using plush yarn and the G crochet hook. Start with a slip knot and chain 16. Then, starting in the second chain from the hook, we're single crocheting back along the chain. That means we're doing 15 single crochet. And when working in rows, I always like to mark the first stitch of the row so that we don't lose stitches. After the 15 single crochet, we're going to chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to work in the back loops only. So going into that last single crochet you did in row 1, in the back loop, we do a single crochet. And I'm just marking this because it's the first stitch of the row. And all the way across, I'm working in the back loops. The last stitch of the row is always going into the marked stitch. Then chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to do the same thing to get up to approximately 34 rows, or enough rows to fit snugly around the head. So I'm going to finish off row 3 and go up to row 34 off camera. So I've done my 34 rows, and an easy way to count is that each of these sections is 2 rows. Or you can just do enough rows to fit snugly around the head. Once you've done enough rows, we can cut the yarn, making sure to leave a long tail for sewing. And you can turn it whichever way you like. And then we're going to use that long tail to sew these sides together. And we're going to do stitches all the way down, connecting the single crochets of the last row with the chain stitches of the first row. And you'll do that all the way down to the end. Now, because in my case the tails are on the same side, I'm going to tie them together and weave in the ends. Alternatively, you can just weave in the ends. Now we're going to sew close the top of the hat. And I like using a medium weight yarn for this instead of the plush yarn. And I'm using the same color as the pom-pom. And you can decide which side you want to be on the outside. And I'm going through a stitch right at the top. And then this part isn't exact, but I basically like to grab every second stitch at the top like so. As I said, this part isn't exact, it's just so we can gather this top section together. So here I'm joining up to meet the first tail. And now I'm going to gather it. Just keep pulling on both tails until it's nice and tight. There will still be a bit of a hole at the top, which we will cover with the pom-pom. Then you can tie these tails together and weave in the ends or bring them to the underside of the hat. So that hole over there will be covered by the pom-pom, and the hat should fit the head like so. So as I said in the previous video, The pom-pom is about 10 centimeters or 4 inches in diameter, and I'll be using a pom-pom maker in this video. But you could also use cardboard instead, or any other method. YouTube has quite a few videos on different methods of making pom-poms. So this is the pom-pom maker I'll be using, and I think most craft stores sell something similar. So I'll just open up the pieces, line them up, and then wrap yarn around each end until it's very thick. And then I'll just reattach the pieces together and cut down the middle. Then grab a separate piece of yarn and tie it very tightly around the middle. Then unclip the pom-pom maker and remove it. And then just trim as needed. Then I like to take one of the tails from the pom-pom and just gather it around the top of the hat. And then knot these tails together. And then you could weave in the ends, but I just like to bring them to the underside of the hat. And then I knot them together with the tails from earlier. And there is the completed hat. Now we're going to crochet the scarf. And we'll start with a slip knot and then chain enough stitches to get around the neck, crossing over in the middle. So in my case it's about 50. Now, starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to do single crochets all the way back along the chain. Once you've gone the whole way across, you can cut the yarn and weave in the ends. Then lastly, we can put the hat and the scarf on the snowman. Thanks so much for watching the tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.